At a family gathering, my husband handed me divorce papers, claiming I cheated based on fake photos. It took months to uncover his mother's plot to tear us apart. I am Claire, 32, and I thought my husband Daniel, 34, and I had an unshakable bond. We had been together for nearly a decade, supporting each other through life's highs and lows. That illusion shattered at a family gathering, where Daniel handed me a thick envelope in front of everyone. "Claire, sign these," he said coldly. I opened it, my heart pounding. Divorce papers. Accusations of infidelity. Evidence attached. Photos of me in another man's arms. I was blindsided. I barely managed to whisper, "What is this?" Daniel's voice was full of disgust. "You know exactly what this is." The entire room fell silent. His mother, Margaret, sat in the corner, a little too composed, watching everything unfold. My world was crumbling, but something about this setup felt wrong. I had no idea then that this nightmare was orchestrated by the one person who had always wanted to see me gone. The moment Daniel handed me those divorce papers, my mind went completely blank. It was like my body had shut down, unable to process what was happening. The papers felt heavy in my hands, as if the weight of our entire marriage was condensed into that single envelope. The room was deathly silent. His family watched with wide eyes, some whispering behind their hands, others shaking their heads in disapproval. My own family sat frozen, their faces a mixture of shock and confusion. "Daniel," I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. What is this?" His expression was stone cold, devoid of the warmth I had known for years. "Divorce papers, Claire. I want you to sign them." The floor felt unsteady beneath me. "Why? Where is this coming from?" He exhaled sharply, pulling out his phone. "Because you cheated." He shoved the phone toward me, and my heart nearly stopped. The screen displayed photos, grainy, dimly lit images of me leaning into a man in a restaurant, whispering into his ear. Another of me stepping into a hotel lobby, my arm brushing against his. I felt sick. This is not real," I stammered. Daniel scoffed, his eyes dark with betrayal. "So you are going to sit here in front of both our families and lie to my face?" Panic clawed at my chest. "I am not lying. I have never seen this man before." A slow, deliberate clap echoed across the room. Margaret. She sat there, an eerily smug expression on her face, as if this was the most entertaining thing she had ever witnessed. "Oh, Claire," she sighed dramatically. "Even now, you refuse to take responsibility. The least you could do is admit it instead of humiliating my son further." Her voice was silk-coated venom, and suddenly it all clicked. Margaret. This had her fingerprints all over it. I looked back at Daniel, desperate for him to see the truth in my eyes. "Daniel, please. You know me." But the Daniel I had loved, the man I had built a life with, was gone. All that remained was a broken version of him, manipulated by the one person who had always wanted to see us fall apart. Margaret had been a thorn in my side from the moment Daniel and I got engaged. During wedding planning, she made it her personal mission to critique everything I chose. The venue? Too extravagant. The dress? Not modest enough. The guest list? You really think those people belong at a wedding? At first, I tried to win her over. I played the polite, understanding daughter-in-law. I laughed off her passive-aggressive comments, telling myself she was just overprotective of Daniel. But Margaret was not just overprotective. She was controlling. She had Daniel wrapped around her finger, and she was furious that I had come along and loosened her grip. She made sure I knew it too. If I got a promotion, she would sigh and say, "Oh, Daniel, I hope Claire does not get too busy for her husband." If I spent a weekend with my friends, she would say, "Daniel, do you not feel neglected?" A wife should prioritize her family. She knew exactly how to plant seeds of doubt in his mind. And when those did not work, she resorted to outright sabotage. One time, Daniel and I planned a weekend getaway. Margaret conveniently forgot and called him in a panic, claiming she was sick and needed him. He canceled the trip. When I gently suggested she was manipulating him, he got defensive. "She is my mother, Claire. She would not lie about something like that." But she did. Margaret never outright fought with me. No, she was smarter than that. She played the long game. She chipped away at my marriage, little by little, waiting for the day Daniel would finally believe she had been right about me all along. And now, staring at the divorce papers in my hands, I realized she had finally won. Except something about this felt off. The photos. The timing. The way she was watching me, drinking in my misery like fine wine. No, she was not going to win. Not yet. I was going to find out exactly how she had done this, and when I did, I would make sure everyone knew the truth. The divorce papers sat untouched on the coffee table in our bedroom. The moment we got home from the family gathering, Daniel had walked straight into the bathroom, locking the door behind him. I could hear the shower running, but I knew it was not because he needed to clean himself. It was because he did not want to face me. I stood in the middle of the room, staring at those papers. A part of me wanted to rip them to shreds, to march downstairs and scream at him until he saw reason. But I knew that would only make things worse. He was convinced. His mind was made up. Unless I could prove him wrong. I picked up his phone from the nightstand. He had left it there in his rush to get into the shower. His trust in me had eroded so much that he would not even look me in the eye, yet he still left his phone unlocked. Typical. I opened his messages and scrolled through the most recent ones. There was a conversation with his mother, of course. "Margaret, she will try to manipulate you. Do not listen to her lies." "Daniel, I won't. This is killing me, but I can't ignore what I saw." "Margaret, you are doing the right thing, sweetheart. Stay strong." I clenched my jaw. She really thought she had me cornered. I scrolled further. That was when I saw another message thread, one that made my blood run cold. "Unknown number. Here's the proof you asked for." Attached were the photos. I clicked on the contact info, but there was no name, just a random string of numbers. Burner phone. Of course. Margaret would not be foolish enough to send the photos herself. I needed more. I quickly forwarded the images to my own phone and checked the metadata. It showed the date, time, and location where the photos had been taken. And that was when I noticed something strange. The date. According to the timestamp, I had been at that hotel 3 nights ago. But I had not gone anywhere near a hotel that night. I had been at home, making dinner for Daniel. And I had proof. I rushed downstairs to the kitchen, yanking open a drawer and pulling out a receipt. It was from the grocery store, timestamped for that same evening. I had been buying ingredients for the meal I had cooked for Daniel. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through my text messages. There it was, a message I had sent Daniel that night. Me. I'm making your favorite tonight. Hurry home. His response had been immediate. Daniel, can't wait. Love you. I stared at the text, my heart pounding. That was the night from the photos. The night I was supposedly with another man. I took a shaky breath. Margaret. She had faked the photos. Or worse, she had someone else fake them for her. But why? What was she getting out of this? I needed to go deeper. I copied the image files and sent them to a friend of mine, Sarah, who worked in digital forensics. Me. Can you check if these photos are real? Something feels off. Sarah, give me a couple of hours. I exhaled. If these were doctored, Sarah would find out. But I could not sit around waiting for the truth to come to me. I needed to dig. And I knew exactly where to start. Margaret had always been careful, but she had one weakness. She was arrogant. She thought she was untouchable. I grabbed my coat and car keys. It was time to pay her a visit. Margaret's house was a shrine to her own self-importance. Everything inside was pristine, polished, and painfully expensive. The kind of wealth that screamed, I am better than you, but in a refined, passive-aggressive way. She was sitting in her favorite armchair when I arrived, a glass of wine in her hand. The smirk she gave me when I stepped into the living room made my skin crawl. You look awful, dear, she said, sipping her wine. Divorce does not suit you. I ignored the bait. Cut the act, Margaret. Her eyebrows lifted in faux surprise. Oh, whatever do you mean? I crossed my arms. I know you faked those photos. She laughed. Actually laughed. You sound desperate. And paranoid. I pulled out my phone and held up the text thread between her and Daniel. You really should be more careful about what you text him. Her smirk faltered. Just for a second. But I caught it. Do you have proof, dear? She asked smoothly. At that moment, my phone buzzed. A message from Sarah. Sarah, photos are fake. Heavy digital manipulation. They used your image from older pictures and altered them. 100% staged. I smiled. Actually, I do. I turned the screen toward her. These are fake. I had them checked. Which means you are behind this. She set her wine glass down, her eyes narrowing. Even if I were, do you really think Daniel will believe you? I leaned in. Oh, I am not telling Daniel. That caught her off guard. Then what are you doing? She asked, her voice wary. I tilted my head. I'm going to find out why you did this. You are too smart to destroy your son's marriage just for fun. There is a reason. And I am going to expose it. For the first time, Margaret hesitated. She was hiding something. I decided to test a theory. This is about control, is it not? You never wanted me in your family. You wanted Daniel to marry someone you chose. She gave me a pitying look. Oh, sweetheart. You really think this is about you? I clenched my fists. Then what is it about? She smirked. Figure it out. That was all I needed to hear. Margaret was playing a game, but she had just made a mistake. She thought she had all the power. But now, I had something she did not expect, proof. And I was going to use it to destroy her little scheme. I spent the next 2 weeks digging. Margaret had skeletons in her closet. I just had to find them. With Sarah's help, I traced the number that had sent the fake photos to Daniel. It was a burner phone, purchased a month before our supposed scandal. The credit card used to buy it? Margaret's. Amateur move. But that was not all. I dug through financial records and found something even more interesting. A series of payments, large ones, transferred from Margaret's personal account to another bank account. The recipient? Daniel's ex-girlfriend, Vanessa. Suddenly, everything clicked. Vanessa had always been Margaret's favorite. They had stayed close even after Daniel and I got married. But Vanessa had been out of the picture for years, until now. I called Sarah. I need to know where Vanessa has been the last few months. Sarah was already ahead of me. Funny you should ask. I did some digging. Turns out she just moved back into town. And guess where she has been staying? My stomach dropped. Tell me. Margaret's guest house. I closed my eyes. Of course. Margaret had not just framed me. She had been setting Daniel up to reunite with Vanessa all along. It was not about me. It was about getting Vanessa back into Daniel's life. I had enough. It was time to turn the tables. I arranged for a meeting with Daniel. Neutral ground, a cafe we used to go to. He was reluctant at first, but I convinced him to hear me out. When he walked in, he looked exhausted. I could tell he had been struggling with this. Good. I slid a folder across the table. Before you say anything, just look at what is inside. He hesitated but opened it. Inside were the forensic analysis proving the photos were fake. A copy of the credit card transaction showing Margaret's purchase of the burner phone. Bank statements linking her payments to Vanessa. Screenshots of Vanessa's recent whereabouts, including her living arrangement. I watched as the realization sank in. His face drained of color. This cannot be true. It is. My voice was steady. Your mother has been manipulating you. She wants you to leave me for Vanessa. He looked at me desperate. But why would she? Because she never wanted me to be your wife. I leaned in. And because she thinks she can control you. Silence. Then Daniel did something I had not expected. He laughed. It was not a joyful laugh. It was bitter. Of course, he muttered. Of course she would do this. He looked up at me, regret in his eyes. I was so stupid. I crossed my arms. Yes, you were. He exhaled. What do we do now? I smirked. We make her pay. Margaret had spent months ruining my life. Now it was my turn. Daniel and I played the perfect broken couple. He pretended to remain distant, still hurt, still processing. Margaret, thinking she had won, pushed harder, encouraging him to reconnect with Vanessa. We let her think she had won. Until we struck. Daniel confronted Vanessa first. With all the evidence in hand, she broke, admitting to everything. She told him how Margaret had convinced her to come back, promising her that Daniel still loved her. Then came the public humiliation. Daniel and I arranged for a family gathering, the same kind Margaret had used to humiliate me. Only this time, she was the one caught off guard. In front of everyone, Daniel laid out the evidence. The fake photos, the money trail, Vanessa's confession. Margaret's face turned red. Daniel, please. But Daniel cut her off. You ruined my marriage, Mother. You lied to me. Margaret looked to her husband for support, but even he shook his head in disappointment. Daniel straightened. I am done with you. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. For the first time, Margaret had nothing to say. She had lost. And I made sure she knew it. Margaret's downfall was not just a single moment of public humiliation. It was the unraveling of everything she had spent her life building. After the family gathering, the fallout was swift and brutal. Daniel's father, usually a man of few words, looked at Margaret like she was a stranger. I trusted you, he said quietly. I thought you loved this family. Margaret's voice was shrill with desperation. I do love this family. I did what was best for Daniel. But no one was buying it. Daniel's relatives whispered among themselves, exchanging shocked glances. Some looked at Margaret with disgust, others with pity. But not a single person defended her. For the first time in her life, Margaret was alone. And I made sure she stayed that way. Daniel did not just cut her off. He exposed her. Publicly. Socially, she was ruined. The same people who once admired her now gossiped behind her back. Friends distanced themselves. Charity boards politely asked her to resign. She was livid. She tried to do damage control, but the evidence was too damning. Even Vanessa turned on her, calling her a manipulative snake. Margaret reached out to Daniel, trying to guilt-trip him. I was only trying to protect you. I did it for your own good. He blocked her number. She sent letters. He shredded them. She even showed up at his office, sobbing, making a scene. Security escorted her out. Margaret had built her life around power and control. Now she had neither. And that was just the beginning. Vanessa did not fare much better. After her public confession, her reputation was in ruins. She had banked on a future with Daniel, but now? No one wanted anything to do with her. Her desperation was pathetic. She tried to get back into Daniel's good graces, apologizing, claiming Margaret manipulated her too. Daniel shut that down fast. If you had any morals, you would not have accepted my mother's money in the first place, he told her. Vanessa's face burned with shame. She had no comeback. Last I heard, she left town. Quietly. With nothing. Good riddance. With Margaret and Vanessa dealt with, it was time to focus on myself. For months, I had been fighting to prove my innocence, to clear my name. Now, I was free. But Daniel was not. He had been blindsided, manipulated, and forced to question everything he believed in. And even though he had seen the truth, he still had one thing left to do. Make things right. One evening, he showed up at my apartment. He looked different. Tired. Regretful. Hopeful. Can I come in? He asked. I let him. We sat in silence for a long time before he finally spoke. I was a fool, he admitted. I should have trusted you. I should have known you would never do something like that. I crossed my arms. Yes, you should have. He nodded. I do not expect forgiveness. I do not even know if I deserve it. But I want to try. I studied him. He looked wrecked. But not just from guilt, from losing me. And a part of me, despite everything, still loved him. I sighed. It is not that simple, Daniel. I know. He leaned forward. But I love you. And I will spend as long as it takes proving it. I stared at him. And for the first time in months, I saw the man I fell in love with. Maybe, just maybe, we had a chance. Margaret lost her power. Vanessa lost her future. And Daniel, he almost lost everything. But the difference between him and them? He was willing to change. And that made all the difference. If you enjoyed this story, do not forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, press the bell icon so you never miss an update.